So, this is the beginning of the series 10 Myths Blocking Special Ed Systems Change. And we're starting with number 10 because we have to build suspense. Number 10 is the missing voices myth. And I'm here with Dr. Rachel Juergensen. And Rachel, you are the perfect person to have this conversation. Tell the audience a bit about your background and why you're the perfect one to talk about missing voices in special ed systems change.
Sure. Thanks, Amy. A little bit about my background. I spent some time in the classroom as a classroom teacher, always working with students with disabilities in my elementary classroom, and then moved into an administration position where I spent a lot of time working with IEP teams and thinking about ways to support students within schools on those teams and then worked at a statewide level, focusing on working with coaches who worked with schools who wanted to implement systems to support behavior and all of the collaboration that goes along with that. And now, in my role as assistant professor at Delaware State University, I work with pre-service teachers who are minoring in special education who want to learn how to best collaborate when they go out into the real world and in their jobs and in their schools and try their best to support students as well.
So you've had lots of, it's like you've worn all these different hats and you've looked at the issue of how do we improve special ed from all these different angles. And you've seen what happens when we don't get multiple voices in the process.
Yeah, so when I think about all of my different roles, they all have that common thread of needing to work together, needing to get different voices to support students with disabilities, students that are struggling. But it's never been easy. It's always been challenging work. And I think that's because a lot of times we don't have the right people at the table. We don't have the number of people we need at the table. We don't have the voices that we need to be able to put together an amazing plan and a system to support students. Amy, I think you have an amazing amount of knowledge and expertise and years and years and years of amazing things going on in special education. So I would also argue that you are the perfect person to talk about this topic as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Sometimes the most valuable experience we have are the failed experiences, lessons learned that you won't do that again because you can really save people a lot of trouble and energy and expense by not making that same mistake. And I can think of districts that have brought me in and said, you have a method for improving special ed. We've seen what you've done in that district. Come do the same thing here. And I'm like, oh, sure, I'll come in and I'll bring my team and we'll do it. And it fails if we haven't stopped to say, what do they need here? What do these people want here? Yay, so we're the right two people. So, what exactly is the problem? The problem of not having voices. I think if we were going to name it, it's when a district invites a consultant, and it could be us, it could be any consultant, to come in and bring their solution and apply it as is to special ed systems change without getting input.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that happens a lot, right? So districts will reach out and they'll say, come in and fix everything. And it's like we're already an outside person coming in. And yes, we have experiences, we have expertise, but those are all individualized to the people that we were working with along the way. Each school, each district is very unique in their problems that they want to work on, the populations that they serve. And all of those different nuances require different voices to come to the table to be able to work towards solutions collaboratively.
So let's look at what voices are we talking about? So the first one that comes to mind is teacher voice. And
Mhm.
I can remember a time that I was setting up to do a workshop where I've been brought in, one of those lessons learned. And as I was setting up my equipment and getting my computer online and everything, teachers started coming in. It was in the cafeteria and all these teachers were coming in. It was the end of the day. and they were coming in with their pile of papers to grade or, their plan book or whatever. And they were asking me, what's this on? What's this workshop on? What's the topic? And how long do we have to stay? And I'm thinking, nobody knows what my topic is. They haven't even been informed. And is this what they think they need? They are on the front line. And I said, have you been having a lot of workshops? And they said, oh, yeah, we had a workshop on, and they started naming, and they ran out of fingers
Mhm.
of how many initiatives they've had this year that somebody else thought they need to sit through. And I said, how can you possibly implement all of those? And this very honest teacher said to me, oh, we don't have to implement them. We just have to be polite to the speaker. It broke my heart. I wanted to stop. I wanted to say, go do those other initiatives. And when you're ready, when the timing is right, then let's roll up our sleeves and really work on improving special ed. But I thought, oh, these teachers don't need one more thing.
Yeah, that reminds me of, when I worked with teachers and at the statewide level for positive behavior support, they would talk a lot about initiative fatigue. So leaders coming in and just asking teachers to do something new year after year after year, rather than sticking with something that's research-based and evidence-based and works and, getting better at that and improving in that area. And so I think educators really do, suffer from that initiative fatigue, and that can really, I think, bring some negativity into the space, and that's definitely not what we're wanting.
Well, and look what it's leading to. We have a shortage of special ed teachers across the country.
Yep.
And we have a shortage of all teachers, but especially special ed. And, so asking them, what would, what do you want to learn next? What do you want to, how can we support you and getting their voice, at least in that? The second audience I want to talk about is principals. Sometimes the district has this idea, we're going to bring this in, we're going to improve special ed, we're going to improve compliance, we're going to work with all the teachers, and the principals are then the last people to be informed. And again, I'm thinking, if I'm the principal of a school, I have my school improvement plan that I've
Mm.
submitted that's been approved, and now I'm being told there's this other initiative, and you wonder why it's not working well.
Yeah, I think there's sometimes, and this was my experience as an administrator too, there's a disconnect between the group of people that are giving direction to building leaders, principals, assistant principals, and then that same disconnect between that group, the principals, assistant principals, and the teachers in that building. And it's like trying to find that through point between those groups. And again, bringing in all those voices seems like, at least a start to a solution.
In one district, and this is probably the worst case scenario, I remember walking into a principal's office and saying, I'm here for the workshop that I've been told to come do, back in the days when I was still learning this lesson. And the principal said, oh, yes, it's something about special ed and co-teaching or inclusion or something. My teachers know to show up in the library after when all the students are dismissed. So go ahead down there and, I guess they'll show up. And I said, well, I have some online videos. Are you going to, he said, we have other priorities in my building. And if they want to watch them, if they want to work with you, that's okay with me. I'm not going to stop them, but I'm not going to follow up. I'm not going to participate. I have other priorities that you know, I'm being held accountable for certain things, and this isn't on my list. Um, Once again, if we don't have the principal's voice, how do we make this all work?
Yeah. And I mean, that sounds like a case of just trying to check a box of like, yes, we did this, but you're not really bought into, and the people that are involved in it are not bought into why this needs to happen.
And that's not a win for anybody. It's
Right.
certainly not a win for us as consultants. It's not a win for the teachers. It's not a win for the principal. Let's see, what other voices? Student voice.
Well, I think students and families, but just specifically thinking about students, who knows students better than themselves? And I think they're probably the group that is left out of conversation and decision making the most. Um, Particularly at the lower level. When you move into secondary, I think you see more of, like gathering student voice, but elementary students have just as much expertise and knowledge about themselves and their peers as secondary students do. So it's critical to get that for the buy-in, but they also have a different perspective, and they're who we're trying to support. Why would we not include their voice in decision making?
Yeah, questions like how does it feel when the special educator takes you down the hall for your intervention period? How does that feel? And what would you prefer? And what would it take for you to be successful? Yeah, that's really so much more powerful. And you mentioned families.
Yeah, families, I think even more than students, it seems in my experience that they are included almost as one of those other check boxes. Like, yes, we included the family, but they need to be a meaningful and meaningfully included in the conversation, whether this is IEPs or something going on with the school. All of the decisions that are going into systems and decisions that happen at school. But again, same with students. Who knows more about students than their families? Nobody. They have the expertise, they have the knowledge, they have the history that they can bring into, making decisions about what to try and what might work. And so I mean, when I think about the high leverage practices for special education and what I work on with my pre-service teachers, there's an entire section about collaboration and working with students and collaborating with families. And that's because the research is telling us that that works. We need to be doing that in order to be successful.
I know there was a fabulous experience I had with a district that as they were rolling out their new inclusion program where more kids were going to be included and reduce the amount of pull-out time, the more inclusion, then they had a series of workshops for the families. And then they got so the families could be informed and they understood what was happening and they knew how to support their child from home. And not that families don't know how to support their child from home, but that families don't know how to support their child with this change. Things are
Right.
going to be different. And what do we need to do so that we're all on the same page?
That makes me think of one of my students going through my certificate program. So I have some teachers who are out in the field who are certified in other areas who are coming back to get their certification in special ed. And one of our courses, we do an advocacy project, and one of hers was called Coffee, Tea, and IEPs. So she had a time where it was an informal time where she gets together with families and just talks about what to expect, what questions to ask, how to be meaningfully involved. And I think a lot of times it's that initial invitation to make families feel comfortable to even be a part of the conversation. And then from there, we can, really work with them to lean and leverage on their expertise to get the information that we need and the decisions that we need to be able to support students.
That's such an important point. And I'm thinking there's a through theme through all of these voices that are missing. When we ask for people's voice, we say we respect you, we respect your expertise and what you bring, what you contribute to the overall picture. And we believe that you know some important things, you know what you need. And maybe some of the input from these missing voices could help shape the new initiative so it really is exactly what they want. It definitely increases buy-in when teachers have been asked, what do you want? How would you like it to look? Even if they don't get exactly what they asked for, they've been asked and they've been heard. And I think that's so important. So let's move to how can schools do this? So there's the obvious doing surveys,
Mhm.
doing focus groups. I saw a fabulous webinar on, they called it the inner circle, outer circle, I think, where they had an inner circle of families, for example, and then they had an outer circle of people from the district that were all taking notes on what the family said during this focus
Mm,
group. And so they had different, because you listen, you hear different things than I would hear. So they had
right.
all these different people who were listening, and the families felt really heard. They had a facilitator, of course, and there were certain key questions. They've done it with students too. So there was the inner circle and then the outer circle that was taking notes, and then they would put their notes together. So that's a different way of doing focus groups, but also quite valuable. Another method that folks might use to gather different voices is our Joyful Inclusion Compass, which you helped us design as our evaluator for the Joyful Inclusion system. And so this is one where our team comes out and we spend a couple of days, depending on how big the district is, gathering information, visiting classrooms, doing focus groups, looking at some documents, talking to the principals. And then we come back with our preliminary scores and we sit down with the leaders at the district level and maybe some at the building level, and we score it together of where we think they are on the journey from um, not even considering some of the important indicators all the way up to it's fully implemented everywhere and it's embedded in everything that they use. So we have this joint collaborative scoring, and then we help them to create their strategic plan. But they have the rest of the background about everything else in their district. So their strategic plan has to be really their process, not ours as an outside entity. So
Yeah.
is there anything you want to add about the compass? It's another option for districts that want to get wide voice.
Yeah, I think there's 3 things actually I really like about that tool, and the first is that it's not relying on one single source of data. So, we're getting data from observations, we're getting data from surveys, so it's a mix of qualitative and quantitative data that we're really mixing together and integrating to get a full comprehensive picture of where a school is currently at. The second thing is the diversity of voices. So, it's not us coming in as an outside group and saying, this is how we think you're doing. It's how do we think things are going as a group? So the people that are involved in the work, boots on the ground, doing the work, the day-to-day supporting students, they're there to talk about and kind of self-assess and self-evaluate where they're at. And then I think the third powerful piece of it is we're not looking for perfection. We're just looking for like what's your current reality? And then how can we use what we know works best for students and make a plan to move forward and keep making improvements.
Thanks for pointing those three things out. I am so excited about adding Compass to all of the packages that we have. I think it will help districts um, get voices if they don't have another approach.
One more thing I want to add is, kind of drilling down and not just thinking about groups as like students as a group and principals as a group and teachers as a group, but looking at the demographic you serve. So, what demographic does your school serve? And making sure voices from all of the diversity represented within your school and your district are at the table for these conversations. A lot of times, I think when we open up groups or conversations or surveys, we tend to get the same voices that respond, but we need to be really intentional about making sure that we have voices at the table that represent the populations that we're working with.
Good point. That's really so valuable. We have another option that we could offer folks who want to gather information, and that's our new Navigator app.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about this new navigator. We have had folks taking it, and you have to sit down for about 10 minutes and answer these questions from your own stakeholder point of view. So it's for general ed teachers and specialists and principals and district leaders and families. We haven't rolled it out yet for youth. We want to do something a little different. We think we want to use a little different language for them. But we have
Mhm.
8 different stakeholders, And that when folks answer these questions about how they think special ed inclusion is going, then they get a response back. They get a radar graph, and then they get some recommendations for actions they can take. And I was talking with a district leader just last week who asked if he promotes this across his district and has teachers and specialists and administrators and families complete it, could we find their data, aggregate their data, and send them their raw data of what folks across their district think about how inclusion is going. And that's we certainly can do that. We just have to know to
Yeah.
gather that data.
And
So
how powerful that is for the district to have that data, because that is a prime example of collecting different stakeholder voices, but then also individually for the individuals that fill it out to be able to see kind of where they stand, but then also get those action items or those ideas for implementation that come along with filling out the information in the app. I think it's beneficial at the individual level, but also at the district or school level as well.
yeah, I'm excited to offer that to schools. It's like part of my thank you for more than 50 years of having a satisfying profession. Let me give this back. And for now, it's free. So people can take advantage of it. So let's sum up. Myth number 10 is the missing voices myth. I think we've dissected who the missing voices are, what you can do about it, why this is an issue, and we will put a link to the app in the down in the show notes so that folks could um, promote the app or use the app themselves.
Mhm.
Is there any last wisdom that you want to add, Rachel?
I think I just want to just leave with not thinking of things as checking off a box, but being very intentional and making everything meaningful. Teachers, educators, leaders have so much on their plate that they know when it's just we're just doing something to because we have to do something. Let's do something that's meaningful and that is going to make an impact on all of our students. So just always think with intention and plan with intention.
I'm going to say amen to that. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for
And
having me.
in every 2 weeks, we will have a video on the 10 myths. So, number 9, I'm not going to tell you what it is. Number 9 is in 2 weeks.
Suspense.
And hope you tune in for the whole series.
Thank
Bye
you.
for now.
Bye.